This is one of the famous journalists in Sweden. His name is Diogo. I will quote him. He says, you always have to put the result in the relation to the objectives and means. I've been eavesdropping on people, I've stolen their mail, committed burglary, tried to get people to steal classified documents, and blackmailed people. I felt then that it was justifiable. We had, for example, never managed to get the evidence in the IB affair without committing crimes. So this is the man who in Sweden symbolizes investigative reporting. You probably don't know about the IB affair. It's the internal bureau inside the Swedish Social Democratic parties. It turned out that they had been registering left-wing citizens for many years secretly, and in Sweden this is a crime. But the one punished was the journalists because they had to go to jail for revealing this story. This was in the 70s, and we will have a look at what has happened since 1989 until now. But first, I'll have to say something about the data, because they come from the Swedish Journalist Survey, this time series every 5 years. The sampling is from the Swedish Journalist Union. Affiliation is approximately 90%. So in '89 we sampled 1,500 with a response rate 64. This autumn 2,500, response rate 59. The question was formulated as this: journalists sometimes have to use various methods to get hold of inaccessible data. How do you access the use of the following reporting methods? Do I have 12 minutes? Okay. This is the famous Esta Blende Nordström. In 1914, she got employed as a maid to report on the working conditions on Swedish farms. She's a great hero in Sweden, and she had actually many followers abroad as well, international. Below you will see what we call valstugor in Sweden. It's a kind of election cottage. Every politician during election campaigns has one. And over you will see another famous reporter called Jan Josefsson, who actually really exposed racist tendencies among the politicians. They went undercover, pretended to be a racist voter, and the politicians said things like, oh, you know, the Muslims are really good at reading and getting public fundings. In this case, the politicians had to resign, actually. This first set I chosen to call false flag operations, so let's have a look. The first one is getting employed to gain inside information. And as you can see, the attitude has changed. In 2011, 90% of the Swedish journalists say this is acceptable if there's no other means to get the information. Pretending to be someone else. You can also see during 20 years that the acceptance has risen, actually, for these methods. We also asked about the internet, of course. Only 2011, for obvious reasons. And as you can see, 20% say never, regardless of forum, and 80% is in favor to use this method. But it should be noted that it's restrictively, okay? It's seldom. Worth to know is also that there's a debate, constantly a debate in Sweden about these methods, actually. Not the methods per se, but in relation to the public interest. So there's a huge debate. Every time there's a revelation or a media hunt or media drive or something, you will have a discussion of the methods in relation to the purpose. or to the public interest. There's no common definition, so public interest is always debated in relation to the methods. So the second set is about confidential material and paying. I guess you don't recognize. Sweden is a small country up in the north, but all of a sudden it turned out we were selling weapons and helping the Saudi Arabians to build up their weapon industry. This was revealed to us in March this year, and it was based on a huge amount of confidential material. And as you know, this is a bit controversial. We know this from WikiLeaks and other stories. And by the way, Julian Assange is coming to Sweden, you know that? I don't think we will handle him over to the Americans. The acceptance for copying secret documents has increased during the years. Today you have 20% of the journalists saying never, compared to 20 years ago. Paying for them is a bit more problematic. Swedish journalists are not that willing to pay for information, actually, because of, there's a risk about the purpose from the sources. It might be considered as bribing people. So, and this attitude has not changed. The same pattern when it comes to paying an interview. And as you can see, there's a more restricted attitude towards paying today than it was 20 years ago. And please don't be shocked. I've taken the liberty to darken his private parts. Do you know who this is? This is Christer Pettersson. He was accused of the murder of our Prime Minister Olof Palme in 1988. He was later acquitted, the left picture, when he got out, mixing Koskenkorva and Baileys. This is called doing a Christer in Sweden. He went quite celebrity. This is from The Hustler, 3 years later. As it turned out, he was offered 500,000 Swedish crowns to say in a TV show that he committed murder. Now, he refused, but this led to a huge debate in Sweden about paying for information. So this is one of the most important cases. There are others that explain some of the decline and unwillingness to pay in 2011. So a comment to all this method, except for paying, is that the acceptance is increasing, actually, in Sweden, and there's a lot of still a debate about the public interest. The last set of methods are about threatening and betraying your sources. Comment to all these three I will show you is that there are hardly any debate on them in Sweden, and they are not accepted. Bear in mind that these are attitudes, not actual behavior, but they will tell you something about the newsroom cultures and what's allowed and not. So in Sweden, you do not threaten your sources with bad publicity. You will see that almost 90% will say this is never, never, ever acceptable. Same when it comes to breaking off the record promise. Never justifiable, 85%, no change over time. Using private material, same pattern. This is the closest we will get to phone hacking in Sweden. We can't ask actually questions about phone hacking. What's interesting, what you can see here, is that our students, those who are trained journalists at the university, nearly 40% of them states that this can be okay. And I think this is the big challenge in Sweden for journalist educators, actually, to put this up on the agenda, because we don't know what's behind these answers. That's the problem with surveys. Yeah, so we don't know what's in it. But there is a debate going on in Sweden, actually, between the tabloids and the celebrity press, because all of a sudden the celebrity press claims to be more ethical than the tabloids. So there are several examples, and this is because most of the reporting about celebrities has moved into the tabloids. So that's the huge ethical debate in Sweden right now. Thank you.
Question at the back. Do you have a breakdown of broadsheet and tabloid journalism?
Yeah, but there's no differences in the only thing overlapping is education, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And for some reason, women, the reason might be Ebba, actually, because she's a hero at journalist education, and there's more women, actually, that think going undercover is acceptable than men. So there's a gender aspect, and there's also a matter of education. But then again, this is attitudes. I'm quite sure that there will be practices inside tabloid newsrooms that wouldn't be accepted inside local morning papers. To mention one reason.
I think you've been generous to everything. I was just quite interested in your last slide up there, where it seems that not many people are willing to use personal documents, but I don't know how it is in Sweden, but journalists in this country don't seem to have many qualms of using sort of personal information from things like Facebook profiles. I just wondered if you have any comments on that.
But you know, in Sweden, I don't think Facebook is not considered to be private, actually. It's more of a public arena. No.
Well, it depends how you define the
I know.
setting.
But yeah, of course. But we have some cases, of course. But I think people are unaware. We had this, you know, the European Song Contest, which we actually won. Don't know if you're familiar with that. I'm very proud. And the girl who won it, she's from Morocco, or her mother is born in Morocco. She's born in Sweden. And all of a sudden on Twitter, you know, we have this left-wing racist party. It turned up Sweden won, or was it Sweden? And he was quite unaware of that going out in the public. See, that's Twitter. That's not Facebook. That's Twitter, and he's a politician. I think it's a blurring of distinctions, but Facebook, to many people, it's public arena.
Some people do have private Facebook accounts, and
Yeah.
so I was wondering if you just have any reflections on that, and what they would and wouldn't use.
There's lots of stuff to talk about. We better move on to Rui. So thanks very much. Now we have Rui Novais. He's going to talk about standards, ethics, and practices.
22 minutes.
Okay, and this is a snapshot and a spin-off of a larger project financed by the Portuguese Science Foundation, which in its turn is also a part of a very large project. It involved 21 countries back in 2011. Now it involves, for the next wave of research and surveys, it will involve 80 countries. It's done also by Monica in Sweden, and in the UK it's done by a scholar from University of Oxford. Okay? So the idea was to assess the state of art of the journalism in Portugal, but at the same time we have some spin-offs from the original project. This project means that you have to survey 100 journalists from 20 different news organizations on different editorial positions. And what we did then was to compare the Portuguese reality with other countries belonging to very similar media systems. We compared Greece and Spain and Portugal, and we compared with other countries belonging to other media systems like Brazil to see if there was a match or not.